I'm talking today with James Haley, who's the Manager of Community Safety with the CFA. Hello, James.
G'day, how you going?
Very well, thank you. Well, firstly, can you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and what does your day, a typical day look like as a full-time CFA member?
Yeah, look, interesting. A typical day is pretty varied. I manage a department spread from Geelong to the South Australian border, and my main focus is around the fire prevention and planning in the first instance. And so I'm not sure if I have a typical day. Some days I'll be travelling throughout the southwest, meeting with volunteers, council, other emergency services. Another day I might be at a fuel reduction burn, while the next day I could be at an incident control centre responding to a major bushfire or chemical incident or any other sort of emergency.
All right. Well, what first inspired you to want to become a fireman and join the fire service?
Look, I guess originally I grew up in the Dandenong Ranges. I remember as being a small child during Ash Wednesday. I was quite young, and we had ash and embers landing on me while I was in the pool. And I remember my mum evacuating us as such to Melbourne, which is something that always sort of stuck with me. And then when I was 18, I joined the CFA as a volunteer. And from there, I particularly enjoyed working with schools and community groups and, I guess, real people, helping them and helping them to help themselves. And from there, I've been lucky enough to develop a career in the emergency services.
All right, and how did you find out about the educational requirements that you needed to complete as a member of the fire service?
Look, as I said, originally as a volunteer, I guess I got involved, and we do a fairly significant amount of training with our volunteers. But I also had a mentor who worked within the CFA, and they sort of tucked me under their wing and opened my eyes to some of the opportunities within the organisation, which are both volunteer and paid. And that sort of assisted me in my thinking around some of the things I needed to do in terms of my education.
And can you tell us what's involved in joining the fire service? Where did you study and what was it like?
Okay, CFA is a fairly massive organisation, and there are a whole lot of opportunities, and these include both volunteer and career options. Locally, people can join their local brigade by getting in contact with the captain. From a career perspective, you can go through recruit training and become a professional firefighter, or you can alternatively pursue, I guess, some technical jobs within training or within community education, compliance, planning, or a whole range of other fields. So in terms of study, I went to university at Monash University in Melbourne. I did a range of courses there, but I've also done significant training with the CFA. I've done further education with the Emergency Management Institute of Australia and other training with the School of Emergency Management. So it's fairly diverse and quite a range of things that I've done in terms of my education.
And can you describe what it's like when you find yourself in an emergency situation, James?
Yeah. Look, that can be a fairly interesting, fairly interesting and different depending on the situation. At times it's obviously quite stressful and dynamic. But I guess you very much you fall back on your training, and it's in those emergency situations that you realise how important and necessary your training and practicing and the team around you are. So it can be very dynamic and very stressful, but that's where I guess everything that you've done leading up to that plays a pretty important role.
And would you work as a team with your fellow colleagues?
Yeah, look, we need to work as a team, and that's regardless of whether you're in the office environment, whether you're working as part of an incident management team, whether you're preparing for a hot day response or whether you're jumping on the back of a truck. Teamwork's absolutely key for us, and understanding that we as individuals are a part of a team, and that we're all working together for a goal for the community, or for somebody that needs help or might need help in the future. Being a part of that team is absolutely pivotal.
And often when people start out on their careers, they can feel nervous or anxious about performing in their role. So how did you overcome that sort of thing when dealing with emergencies?
That training, very much the training and education you go through, practicing, but also talking to others and support from the other people around you and the team that work with you. The other thing I'd say is being honest and open in relation to your nerves, and recognising that no one's perfect, and that the people that you're working with and the people around you are there to support you. I'd say, don't try and hide the nervousness or anxiety. We all feel nervous or anxious at different times, and being prepared to be honest about it and so forth, and seek the support from others is fairly important.
And what would you say has been the best thing and also the hardest thing about what you do as a firefighter?
The best thing and the hardest thing? That's I guess from my perspective, I love working with the community during emergency situations and being out there in the community. When they're being impacted by fire, when they're being threatened, it's often, seeing the community working together with the fire services. You can see the best that humanity has to offer, it's the seeing people help people. I find that incredibly rewarding, but at the same time, that can also be the worst. Or the hardest, because you're in potentially highly stressful situations. It's a pressure-filled environment, and you can have expectations from different people that you can't always meet. Particularly with a fire impacting on properties, we often talk about that we can't have a fire truck at every house. A lot of people have expectations on us as the fire service or on firefighters that we can't necessarily meet. So it can be the best, but also the hardest thing.
All right, let's talk about where you went to school and how that was for you.
Yeah, I went to school on the Mornington Peninsula, so I didn't move over to southwest Victoria until about 8 or 9 years ago. In relation to how it was, I guess at times it was pretty difficult and it was pretty challenging in relation to particularly knowing what it was all for. I guess I was one of those students who, going through year 11 and 12, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I had some thoughts, but I didn't know where I'd be. Trying to relate what I was doing in terms of subjects and so forth to what's that going to mean for the future? I found that quite hard. But when I look back on it, I think, and when I weigh it all up, I actually think it was pretty enjoyable. I'm still friends with a heap of my mates from school, and none of us live where we grew up. Some of us live in different parts of the country, others overseas, but we're all still good friends. And the other thing that school gave me was the opportunity to explore a whole range of different things, and some of those things I liked, and some of them I didn't like. In the end, I guess when I weigh it all up and look back, it was enjoyable, challenging but enjoyable.
And how would you say education has been in reaching your goals to join the fire service? Is that something that you'd regard as pretty important?
Yeah, certainly. Education and experience have been pivotal in achieving what I'm doing with CFA today. And it doesn't matter whether you're wanting to be a professional firefighter on the back of a truck, or whether you want to be a community educator out working in with schools. We're all of us in the fire services and across the industry, we continue to go to school as such. We're doing constant training, upgrading our skills, and we're learning all the time. And I guess if I didn't have that background, if I hadn't have gone through school and so forth, I guess that could be an awkward thing. But almost every week we're doing something in terms of our training or our development, and certainly, it might be that we're learning about new equipment, new firefighting strategies or techniques, learning about leadership, how to improve ourselves in terms of our leadership, or how to improve the ways we work with community. So, I'd say education's been extremely important in doing the job I do today.
And what about subject choice? Was that something that mattered when you were at school?
Look, to be honest, as I said earlier, I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I was doing year 11 and 12. So I don't think subject choice was necessarily the be-all and end-all. I think what I did was I really chose the subjects that I knew I was good at and that I'd do well at, so that I had the best opportunities when I finished school. So rather than focusing on what subjects I needed because I didn't know, I tried to give myself the best opportunity I could.
All right, what about people that influenced you growing up? Did you have anyone that acted as a role model that might have helped you on your journey to achieving your career that you do now?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned earlier, I certainly had a mentor, or somebody I'd consider a mentor after school, but certainly at school I had an English teacher who I really connected with. He had a number of jobs prior to becoming a teacher, and between his style in terms of teaching, and he was incredibly energetic and engaging, and he also showed a genuine interest. So between that and his broader experience, he certainly had an influence over my decisions in year 11 and 12. And then, following on within my career, I've certainly had a couple of people that I'd call mentors that I've sort of tried to actively work with to improve how I see things or where I can go, and what sort of education or development I might need. So I think that's been a pretty important part of my education process.
And often school exams and assignments can be stressful for students, and we've spoken about what you do in your role, and that often brings about situations that involve stress. Would you have any advice for young people about how they should deal with the stress and pressure when it comes on?
Yeah, look, stress. I guess stress and pressure is an ever-present part of life, and the biggest piece of advice I can probably offer is it's probably twofold. Number one would be to work on things that you can control. If you have no control over it, don't stress too much about it. And number two, find an activity that allows you to de-stress. So something that takes your mind away from your stresses, and it takes your focus away. For me, I do a fair bit of cycling. So when I'm got stress, or I'm feeling stressed, often I'll jump out on the bike, and it just clears my mind. It gives me something else to focus on, and it allows me to think about other things, because I think when you're stressed and you're just focusing on the one or a couple of things, you actually end up making that stress worse. So whether it's jumping on the bike or playing a good computer game or reading a good book, find something that gets you away from whatever it is that causes the stress.
And what advice would you give to young people that might be thinking about choosing a career along the lines of what you've done as a firefighter in the CFA?
Well, first thing would be about looking at getting some experience through. We've certainly got volunteer options. Find somebody within your community that's involved with the CFA and talk to them. But I guess the biggest bit of advice would be keep persisting. So don't just let one thing get you down, or one knockback get you down. keep persisting, and if you're passionate about something, keep at it.
What would you advise to people thinking about becoming a full-time CFA member? Would you say that work experience would be an important thing in that sort of environment before they decided on whether they wanted to do it or not?
Look, absolutely. If somebody was looking at becoming a professional firefighter or working in another part of the CFA, volunteering with their local brigade, that'll help them find out what they might be passionate about. There are so many things that you can get involved in within CFA. It gives you a chance to get some practical experience, and that can help with your broader life or within broader work and experiences. But it can help you also work out what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. And the other thing is, in terms of experience or work experience and so forth, I'd say is broader work experience that in other workplaces, and even experience at school. Wherever you're getting involved with the community will help you to identify what it is that you enjoy, and where your passions lie. So within CFA, you don't have to get on the back of a fire truck. It's not necessarily about going and putting a fire out. It could be about helping a school community with preparing for emergencies, or it might be working in the training department to assist with training firefighters. And there are a whole range of options. So getting out and about and getting experience in a local brigade, who knows where you might end up.
And finally, James, what key message would you give to students who are thinking of leaving school prior to completing Year 12 or the equivalent?
In terms of key message, I guess number one, don't. School might be frustrating. You might not see the point right now, and school provides you with so many opportunities and experiences that are both good and bad, and those good and bad experiences will help you down the track. If you don't go through those, then you don't have that experience to draw on. So I guess the key message is, school might be frustrating, but stick with it, persist with it, because in 10 years' time you'll see why.
Been talking today to James Haley, who's the manager of community safety with the CFA. James, thanks very much for your time, and all the best for your future endeavours.
Thank you very much.